The mind walk came from inside the house. Well, there's the house I grew up in. There's the car I've been driving since high school. Here's the cul-de-sac. I've walked down this road. I've driven down this road. I've biked up and down this road. How many thousands of times? How many tens of thousands of times? I really have no idea. Now we add one more. And I forgot my hat. So be it. I'm wearing a light long sleeve to keep the sun off me. But I'll have to take the sun on my face. Walk on the shady side of the street. To help stay cool. And it's pretty near noon now, so I won't be able to avoid it entirely. I mean, if you go outside, you're not really going to be able to avoid the sun entirely. Unless, of course, the sun's not out. But even then, the sun is reflecting off the moon, so you still can't avoid the sun entirely. And you can't avoid the heat that the sun left behind. That continues to warm the planet as it seeps through the ground and into the atmosphere. My Uncle Joe is fond of saying that. Well, basically that the sun is out to destroy us and kill us, which is all true. And yet it is also the giver of life. Like pretty much everything. Dangerous in high measure. Or low measure, I guess. A lot of things are really dangerous if you're exposed to too much of it or too little of it. But I guess that's what too much or too little means by definition, all according to our sometimes frail, sometimes resilient bodies. Yeah, I grew up around here. Where exactly? Well, I'll tell you, it's Tarzana. Tarzana, California, named after Edgar Rice Burroughs, right? The guy who wrote Tarzan. So not a coincidence really at all that it's called Tarzana. It's kind of a silly name. Maybe I get some of my silliness from that. I was about to say William Rice Burroughs because of William S. Burroughs, who we've talked about on a number of these mind walks, who I basically had a paid internship in college, my freshman year at Lake Forest College, where I was paid an hourly rate and asked to keep track of my own hours. I suppose I could have fluffed those, but I don't think I did. Maybe I fluffed like 1 or 2 hours on one time card just to see if I could get away with it. But it wasn't something I made a habit of. But I think I have some, I don't know what you might call it. Some might call it paranoia. I think I'm gonna go walk up the hill to Joe's place. He's not there right now, but it's a tough hill, worth the exercise. Well, I just kind of think, I guess not so much that I'm being watched all the time. I don't think that. I think most entities out there that have the power to watch me probably don't really care that much. I mean, apart from the people who are fans of mine. And yes, I'm being watched in the sense that my data is being collected constantly. So perhaps it's more true now than ever that I'm being watched. But in any case, it comes less from that. And more just that, I don't know, I feel like if I break the rules somehow, that I'm going to be caught or found out in some way. Or at the very least, if I'm confronted about it, that I won't be willing to lie and say that I didn't. Now, this is, of course, of great advantage to people who would have power and seek to burden me with unjust and unfair rules, sort of knowing that if I break them, I'll out myself. So I've tried to become like a little more forgiving of myself, let's say, if I break a rule and that I don't have to expose myself. But as a matter of principle, I really just prefer to, well, I don't know, always that dichotomy of principle and practice, but in any case, life seems so much easier when you're not lying. You don't have to remember all the webs of interconnected points. You don't even really have to remember what you said. I mean, it's helpful to remember what you said. And certainly if you remember what you said, it may give you some some leg to stand on if someone else accuses you of having said something, but then it just becomes, a I said, you said scenario. But the point being that if you have a habit of telling what you believe to be the truth or what you understand to be the truth, then granted, your recollections can change later. And then you may think that you always understood something to be the truth when, in fact, in the past you didn't think it was the truth and you don't remember that you changed your mind or your position on that. So I suppose that can happen. But apart from all these footnotes and caveats, if you are telling the truth, then you don't have to spend energy lying. You don't have to spend energy putting up a front that what you're saying is not the thing that you believe. You can just let your emotions and your feelings and your body language just be sort of just flowing out from whatever your authentic self is wanting to communicate. This lack of burden in social situations makes it much more tolerable to me. Now, of course, when I'm performing, that's a whole other thing. But even when I'm performing, you can argue that there's an authenticity there because I'm behaving in the way that I would like to behave. But then, that gets into performing again, because some people perform, and I'm speaking now of, whether it's comedy or acting or any kind of showmanship, they perform perhaps very much not in the way that they would prefer to behave, but in a way that they think the audience will be receptive or that the person who's paying their paycheck wants them to perform. And yes, we have to make these compromises. But speaking as an artist, the less I have to make that compromise, the better. Sounds like we have some violin or some viola. Hope y'all could hear that. Now we hit the hill. I've been at home for perhaps a month now. I had a mental health episode. A new one for me. I mean, I suppose we're all having mental health episodes of various sizes at all times. Every day is a new mental health episode. Hello. But this one was pretty severe. I had some manic-like symptoms. At least that's what the people more knowledgeable than me seem to think, and that's what, based on reading what mania and hypomania are, passes the sniff test. But I'll be getting an official diagnosis soon. In the meantime, I've been staying with my folks. After some people in my friends and family network really came together to support me and make sure I got some help. Nothing too serious, just went to the emergency room. After my most aggressive systems? Perhaps so. Symptoms had, started to dissipate. Become less severe anyway. And I was open to help and talking to my friends and loved ones about what was going on. I took their advice and went to the emergency room. Had to cancel a show, sadly. Did really not wanted to do that, but I think it was the right call. I did get jerked around by Kaiser Permanente's mental health program. Didn't really give me what I wanted, redirected me to other departments without my knowledge. So here's to private health care. But of course, instead now, I'm going outside of that private health care to get a diagnosis from yet another private psychiatrist. So that explains a bit of my absence from the MindWalk podcast for a while. I'm grateful that Sean's been still recording with guests. And as soon as I heard that Sean did a solo episode, I realized that I had to do one myself. Not because he insisted I do, or that he even suggested I do. I just thought, hey, what better time? So sure, there's been some frictions and tensions in the house with Mom and Dad. Same house I grew up in. But on the whole, it's been great. Speaking of that violin we heard earlier, if that's indeed what it was, Dad and I have been playing music together. I'm playing guitar and he's playing fiddle. He can be a bit self-conscious. He wishes he were better at the fiddling that he's doing on the various songs we're playing, before he plays them with me. I think perhaps he's feeling like he's either shy about his abilities, but also thinking about how he used to be a little bit better, really only because he was practicing more often. And perhaps also that he thinks he's supposed to be teaching me. And how can he teach me if he doesn't know what he's doing? But, the more we practice, as I keep reminding him, the better he gets and the better I get. I've been playing a B minor chord on the guitar. It's a bar chord. The only bar chord I would play with any regularity was an F. Now I've got a B minor in there. Got to keep practicing, got to keep getting better, learn new tricks. Learn some new strumming patterns, learn using a pick more often. I always just like strumming with my hand, but I should know how to use a pick, so I've been using a pick. And it's just great, Playing high hop ladies and other, old classics of whatever. I don't think I can remember even another name. There's like 6 or 7 songs. There might be Soldier's Farewell or something, but High Hop Ladies, that's the one I really remember. But that process of communication and timing. It's Joe's house. Hello, Joe. Who's not home? Hello, Rusty Moose. He's got a Rusty Moose out front. It's like there's some construction going on across the street from him. Got some ghosts and trees and some painted rocks. You rock, says the rock. All of your feelings are okay. Thank you, Rock. And we have a sad face, Rock. But your feelings are okay, sad face, Rock. Seems people who spend the time to paint rocks are often, they seem to be doing pretty good, spreading positivity. I want to see some evil painted rocks. They're surely out there spreading the messages I don't like. So that's been great, getting to know Dad in that context and doing that project together. But the real big project we've been doing is taking these oak floorboards from Grandma B and Papa Howard's old house. And, they're these really nice oak floorboards. They're tongue and groove, and they're like, maybe not an inch thick, but maybe like half an inch thick. They're pretty, maybe not half, I don't know, quarter. They're thick. And it's all oak. They've been there for 50 years or what have you, 40, 50 years. We didn't want them to go to waste, so they've been sitting in the garage for like 5 or 6 years. And Dad, on his own volition, or I guess because he was watching some kind of home remodeling show, he decided to make a serving tray using the floorboards. He stained them, sanded, stained, put some, am I calling it, trim around it? Molding. Trim sounds better than molding to me, but whatever. Put some quarter round molding around it. And then put some handles on it, handles atop some redwood, just a little bit of redwood that came from a bench that was in Grandma B's backyard, I think, or maybe, no, it came from our backyard here in Tarzana around the planter. So it's like all this stuff from these houses kind of put together into a beautiful but utilitarian object, this serving tray. I saw it, I wanted to make a few modifications to it. I wanted to cut the redwood in half so it's not quite as deep. I figured you didn't need that much depth on the serving tray. Dad wanted to cut a 45-degree angle on the redwood, sloping out towards the long side. We got new handles that look a little nicer. And we've been perfecting the methods and practicing in the garage doing woodwork. I did some woodwork in college when I worked in the scene shop. Now that's a job I'd love to have again. I remember I was put in charge of making desert rocks. So I had these like wire frames that I would wrap in canvas and then paint using a reddish brown paint mix that I made. And then I would go outside and just get like a bunch of sand, pour it in the paint, mix it around, like really gritty sand too, and then paint that on the canvas. And they looked fucking awesome. So I was put in charge of rocks. I really loved that job. I think I surprised Dad when I told him I had a studio art minor, and perhaps some of the things that I knew were coming into use from that education. But in any case, I heard from Mom that he said privately to her that he's been glad that we've been working together and that he's teaching me some things, that I'm teaching him some things. So we've spent a lot of hours in the garage working on this project. Had a few rough patches, of course, especially early on as we were figuring out how to communicate about the project. I definitely seem to have, and he's admitted as much to me, more detail-oriented. Dad said to me that he likes to cut corners, which I think is pretty funny considering you do cut a lot of corners in woodworking, but sometimes I'll want to take a little bit of extra time to do something right, or at least to make sure that things don't go wrong. Because if they do go wrong, then it's like, okay, if we put in too much like wood putty to fill a crack, and then we smear it too much on other wood, then when we start staining it, then the stain won't look as good, and then we have to sand it again and restain it again. It's like all these corrections start adding up until eventually you have to give up and maybe start the piece over again. So I'm more of like, okay, hold on, measure twice, cut once. If you're going to put on the stain, really make sure you're putting it all around. Do 2 coats, not just one. Yes, you can put darker stain on top of lighter stain and it'll cover it up, but if you put on red stain and then you put on a dark brown stain because you didn't like the red, and then on the complementary piece also do the red stain and then the dark brown stain. Don't just put the brown stain on. Do them the same, have them pair up. Mom agrees. So sometimes Dad wants to skip some of those little steps, and I just keep insisting, like, no, we have to do it this way. And I think he's learning something from that. But other times, I want to do things a certain way, and he has a way to do it, or a shortcut of some kind that ends up being great. So indeed, we're learning and we're communicating through the act of creating this stuff. We disagree on politics as ever, although we've had some, pieces of light to shine through. But hey, I've been going on morning walks too, 5 days a week with Dad and Joe. I mean, they're mind walks, really, because I guess any walk is a mind walk. But it would be fun to record, but they don't want to be on mic. Maybe one day, but I think not. They just want to be private about it. I could try and sell them on the idea of what it's all about. It would probably be helping if I were making a lot more money on it, so they could view it as some kind of professional endeavor that they were supporting. But who knows? I mean, Joe could be up for it, but it's just not what I want to push right now, I was just enjoying spending this quality time with the family. And that's what it is. I mean, it's a healing place. I'm grateful to say that. The house I grew up in, where my parents still live, is a healing place. After they brought me home from the emergency room, which there was much discussion about, because, they're in their 70s and didn't want to expose them to COVID, especially after some of the risky behavior I was engaging in while I was in my manic-like state. But I got tested, and they got tested a few days after. Private healthcare, they wouldn't do a fucking test on me. As I was leaving the emergency room and going to be picked up by my elderly parents, he said, hey, can't you make an exception? Can't you get us a test? And they said, oh, it's all handled through the state. Oh, the state. Oh, the state's providing some healthcare. Hey, how about that? Couldn't get one, at least not right then. But all's well that ends well in this case, because we got scheduled for testing a couple days later, and we all came out negative. So, though the circumstances were perhaps a bit forced, the circumstances were forced, because, and I don't disagree with them, my friends and family didn't think it wise for me to go back to my place alone, given what I had just been through and was, still going through. They thought I gotta go back to my folks' place. So I did. It's been very healing. There's lots of good food around. It's quieter up there, or around here, than it is on the street where I live. Familiar things. I'm just lazing about, watching golf tournaments and detective dramas. Doing cooking with Dad also, showing them my own cooking tricks. Made them some mackerel the other day. I was showing them how I make my salads and dressings. They're getting to see what I'm like, as an adult. Spending some extended time together. I was a little resistant to trimming my beard, but I trimmed it. Not shaved it, of course, but trimmed it. The hair remains long in a ponytail. And I was quite resentful of the circumstances around that. I mean, my mom refuses to see me, to look past a long, shaggy beard, She has all kinds of judgments about it. Granted, it could be groomed a lot better, even if it's long, but it's so gross, the level of superficiality that comes with that. If I get judged on the sidewalk by someone, for what I look like, that's one thing. But, when your friends and family start saying, I can't see past how you look in this regard, I guess I'm grateful that they're being honest with me, but it just hurts. So, made the cut, and it wasn't bad. It's not bad. Not bad. I don't mind the shorter beard at all, really. I just didn't like the circumstance in which it happened. But, hey, if I'm under their roof, then, it's the least I can do for their comfort. I have been back to my apartment to do some cleanup, pick up a few things. Some friends don't want me returning to my apartment until I've had a psychiatric evaluation. And while I think I'd be just fine, it's fair enough. That was sort of the plan originally anyway. So that's in the books. That'll happen soon. Hello. I'm doing all right. How you doing? Just going for a walk.
Beautiful day for it.
Yep.
I haven't had many like this.
And I sold most of my comic books. What? I had some good ones, man. Had some good ones. Got definitely a good run of Spider-Mans there in the low hundreds into early 90s. As in issue 90, issue 87, and so forth, 97. Issue 97, Spider-Man versus Green Goblin. One of the first comics to be published that did not get the approval of the Comics Code Authority because I believe it had some drug use in it. Wink, wink. But they published it anyway, so that one's got some extra value. Amazing Spider-Man number 121, The Death of Gwen Stacy. 122. Amazing Spider-Man number 100, number 300. I think number 300, and it was really in just, I don't know if it was near mint or whatever, but it was in great condition. Apart from one little fringe. I kept my Amazing Spider-Man number 7, which was a birthday gift to me on my 21st birthday from my parents. Although it turns out I think that Amazing Spider-Man number 300 was actually worth more because it was in slightly better condition. Had some good Uncanny X-Men, Get Smart comic book. Not worth much, but, maybe $8 or $10 because of its novelty. And just, I read and collected in the early 90s. Early 90s? Late 90s? I guess late 90s, early 2000s, around high school. A bit in college. And I had, like 10 or 11 long boxes full of comics. I kept a few maybe like half a short box for sentimental reasons. And the rest I sold. I think I did pretty well. Definitely some of the ones I bought for investment purposes, you could say. Like I'd buy 2 issues of something thinking it would go up in value. Some of them certainly have. Amazing Spider-Man number 36. Of course, that numbering is, comic books often change their numbering. So that, they start at number 1 again because it's so enticing, or they're sort of rebooting the franchise. And then, of course, when they get back to like, it's going to be the 500th issue, then they, change back to the old numbering because they want to, sell the comic that has the cachet of being number 500. It's all really stupid, but so, but since I've said I did have Amazing Spider-Man number 7, I think it's important now that I clarify that this Amazing Spider-Man number 36 that I'm talking about is not number 36 from, the beginning of the run. But in any case, what makes it so special is the cover is all black apart from the title, which is in white. And it was, if I'm not mistaken, the first Marvel comic, if not just the first Amazing Spider-Man, but I think it was the first Marvel comic published after 9/11. That's when I was in high school, and maybe my senior year. Yeah, probably my senior year. And I remember I bought 2 at the time. So I kept one, I sold the other. It probably was, maybe $225 at the time, perhaps $275. And now if you look at them online in really, really great condition, it could be anywhere from like $40 to $80. So that was a good pick. But, a lot of the other stuff I bought for $225 or $299 now is like worth $1. So, did I come out on top or not? I don't know. I got the enjoyment of reading them. And certainly, Mom bought me a number of those comics at the time, so I wasn't even paying for all of them, though I did pay for for most of them. I'd say at least 75% of them. But I did some organization, took some photos, had a last look, and now they're gone. Most of them, anyway. I can always buy them again later if I have more money and I really want to start collecting again and sort of put my collection back together. But I made a good chunk of money for it. And Dad surprised again. Oh, I didn't realize they were worth that much. It's like, yeah, dude. You thought I was going to get like $50 for the whole thing. I definitely got more than that. So it'll help me with my rent for a couple of months. I'd even get a gig out of it if I'm willing to expose myself to a little bit of COVID. It's a tough question, but money is a motivator. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see what I decide. Maybe I'll go by the comic shop and have a peek. See what the situation is. But it won't be safer than staying home, at least with respect to COVID risk assessment. It's a shame because it's really work I'd like to be doing. It's a gig I'd love to take. You just don't know. I'm editing Sean's memoirs, though. Albeit slowly, but, he's never been one to press me to do it any faster. It's just been a lot of time spent between doing the woodworking and the music. I mean, I want to spend this quality time in the cooking. It's like it's healing. It's awesome. It's like I have this whole new chapter in my relationship with my folks. It's fantastic. So yeah, I'm committing time to that. I've published 2 episodes of the Goat vs. Fish podcast. Fuck yeah. I'm feeling good. It's a great recalibration. Sean is a great friend. He's taught me a lot. He's taught me a lot about risk and reward. He's taught me a lot about going off the beaten path. And now I'm in a position where I get to make some recalibrations. I think, and this has sort of always been pretty apparent in our relationship, that he has a higher tolerance for risk and sort of like getting in trouble and being willing to, let's just say, talk his way out of things that I would be uncomfortable talking my way out of. Than me. So, some of those boundaries that I have crossed are ones I would cross again. Other of those boundaries are not ones I intend to cross again at this point. Now, am I better off for having pushed in those directions farther than I would like? I think there's a very strong argument that yes, it absolutely is. But part of that learning is to come to the conclusion, perhaps, that now that I've crossed into some of that territory, that I do not wish to cross into it again. But at least that decision is now coming from a place of experience rather than from a place of ignorance. So it's a combination. It's like, well, yes, I'm thankful and grateful, but I'm also, upset. I feel that there were some parts of this mental health journey where, look, Sean was being friendly and he was providing care in the way that he thought was best. And in some ways, that care was completely on point. And in other ways, I think that care was, not what I needed. So it's not an all or nothing. It's just, what's this? Guava ice. I have no idea what that is. It is a piece of garbage. I will throw it away. Oh yeah, it's like a vape pen. Hand washing coming up soon. Let's keep this very far away from me. He said, holding on to it. It's been out in the sun for a long time, though. I think I'll be okay. But, so, I may have to have some difficult discussions with him about that. We've already had a few difficult discussions, but it's going to be okay. Relationships are better when you have the difficult discussions. Or they end. No, I don't think that my friendship with Sean, or even my business partnership with him, with respect to the MindWalk, is going to end over this. I suppose anything's possible. It does depend how he reacts. Depends on how I react to his reaction. But still, even now I'm speaking of romantic relationships that have ended through difficult conversations. It's like, well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing you had that difficult conversation. If it needed to be had, and the relationship ends because of it, then you're probably going to be better off. At least that's what I think. We've circled back around, coming back up, adding one more mark. One more mark to the cul-de-sac scorecard of how many times I've been up these streets. I will be up and down them again. I'm actually really enjoying life right now. I don't really feel a prisoner in my parents' home. I feel I'm really making good of it. And I'm parenting my parents as well. As they get older, I have to try and instill good habits in them just as much as they continue to try to instill good habits in me. And my friends and family support network have been here for me in spite of our differences in the past. So it is a wonderful time to take stock and be grateful. This will be a time of fond memories for sure. Let's sprint up the hill. Parents have new neighbors. They're getting along well. I look forward to being able to hang out with them a little bit. We say hi. But COVID again keeps me at a distance. I wonder if the back door is open here. No. We'll have to go in the front. Oh yeah, guys, you should watch this Comedy Store documentary on Showtime that's running for the next 4 Sundays. Because I might be in one of the episodes, albeit briefly, because I was in the trailer. Oh, Bird vs. Bear was in the trailer. That was a crazy thing to learn during my mental health episode. It was like, whoa, it's happening. The universe is happening. Maybe one day I'll tell you more about the specifics of my little adventure, but for now, Solo MindWalk over. Please follow MindWalk Pod on all social media. and become a Barney the Wonder Dog Cadet on the MindWalk Pod Patreon page. Bye.